This is the Ozark Trail Ridge. It's available in Walmart stores for $398. I think it might be a real mountain bike. Now, just using the term real mountain bike carries some damning implications. It implies that other bikes I've reviewed are not, in fact, real mountain bikes, but that's not coming from me. A lot of department stores, including Walmart, will actually put a sticker on the bike that says, hey, congratulations on your new mountain bike. Don't ride it on mountain bike trails. This has no such sticker. Nowhere on the bike. It's a mountain bike. Now, it's hard to talk about this bike without bringing up the Kent Travail. That is the mountain bike from Walmart that we know best. I've done a series of videos on it. It appears all the time. That's kind of the one to beat. And the Kent Travail is an especially good comparison because it too costs $398. It too is sold at Walmart stores, and it kind of has all the same features as the Ozark Ridge, but I think the Ozark Ridge is the one to buy. I think it's a better bike overall, at least it is in the long term. And actually, it seems like somebody's listening to us, or just all of YouTube. I'm not the only one who has reviewed the Kent Travail. Every single criticism that I had about it has been addressed on this bike. It's like they're watching us. Who is watching us? Well, Walmart, I guess. This is not a Kent, it's not a Mongoose, it's not a Huffy. This is made by Ozark Trail. That's a Walmart in-store brand, and somebody's been making some smart decisions. Now, although I am surprised about almost every feature on this bike, there is one thing I'm not surprised about at all. The handlebars were installed wrong on 3 axes, which I didn't even know was possible. The brakes were pretty much locked up. The derailleur hanger was bent, and so I needed to align it. It did have a case of the whiskey grips, which is uncommon with the lock-on grips. The pedals would have come off on my first ride, and I would have died. And the front wheel was installed by a 5-year-old. No offense to 5-year-olds. I mean, by now, this is not a surprise. We know you can't just take it off the shelf and ride it. You gotta check it over yourself or bring it to a bike mechanic. That's kind of the name of the game with department store bikes. I'm gonna rate it based on what you are getting for the money, not on the assembly, because we've already written that off. Let's start with the biggest advantage the Ridge has over the Travail. It's available in multiple sizes. That's huge. This is available in medium, apparently, and I did see a large at the store. The Kent Travail was only available in large. If a bike doesn't fit you, I don't care what type of components it has, what the geometry is. It doesn't matter. If it doesn't fit you, you're not gonna be able to ride it. Also, you may remember the kickstand on the Kent Travail. It came with a kickstand, and then when you take it off, there's this big welded piece of metal hanging below the chainstay. The Ridge doesn't even come with a kickstand, and so they must expect that you're gonna be mountain biking with it, and all that's left are these 2 little M5 holes. No big deal. Also on the Kent Travail, I tried to find a dropper post for it. Doesn't exist. Maybe it's out there, I couldn't find one. It's got some weird seat tube size. This has a 31.6 millimeter seat tube. You can install a dropper post in it easy, and it's got ports for internal cable routing for a dropper post. The only reason that you would have 2 holes over here is to route a dropper post cable, and they actually spent more money to do this, to make it upgradable so that you could keep this bike into the future. You also might notice we got 2 water bottle cages here. The Kent Travail had plenty of space inside the triangle for 2 water bottle cages, but there was only a mount on the down tube. The Ozark Trail Ridge has mounts on both the seat tube and the down tube because they know you're actually gonna go mountain biking with it and you wanna bring enough water. It's also got rack mounts, so you can install a baby seat, a luggage rack, panniers, and a lot like the Kent Travail, it takes pretty normal parts. You can change out the crankset, you can change out the headset. You can change out the fork. It's got a tapered head tube. It has a chainstay protector, just a clear plastic film chainstay protector. The Kent Travail's chainstay just got massacred the first time we took it out because there's no clutch on the derailleur. There's no clutch on this derailleur either, as you would expect at around $400. But the chainstay has some protection, and that's a nice touch. Say what you will about Presta valves, but any mid to high-end mountain bike's gonna have them. Easier to try and hack some kind of a tubeless setup here, easier to find tubes, and the bike's got Kenda tires. They're not special Kenda tires, but the Kent Travail didn't come with special tires either. They're just decent tires for the price. There were also a lot of good things about the Kent Travail that this shares in common with it. For example, it has a 1x9 drivetrain. That's great. You don't need 18 gears up front or 21 gears. 9 gears is better for a mountain bike like this because there's less stuff to brake, there's less weight, there's more ground clearance. It also has a very similar fork as the Kent Travail did. It has front and rear disc brakes. The styling is pretty tasteful. It doesn't have flames on it. It's not called like the Huffy Aneurysm or something like that. It's pretty chill. But it is interesting that this costs $398, the same as the Kent Travail. It's available in multiple sizes. It has way better features all around. There's been considerable inflation since we bought that bike, yet it costs the same. Where did they save the money? Well, they did in a few spots. I'll show you. First of all, the fork. If you remember, the Kent Travail had a little blue switch where you could lock the fork out, keep it from compressing for climbing. This doesn't have that. Nobody uses it, and so I'd say that was a pretty smart place to save some money. But also the pedals, these are plastic pedals. The nubs are already starting to get worn away from rock strikes. On this first ride, the Kent Travail had metal pedals. They're probably better. The Kent Travail also came with a micro shift drivetrain. This does not. It looks like L2 makes it. I don't know who that is, but it looks about the same. It's just a basic derailleur with no clutch, maybe the equivalent of Shimano Alivio. This is something that you're probably going to upgrade anyway if you start doing any serious mountain biking. I did on the Travail. Doesn't cost that much to do. The crankset and chain ring seem to be about the same. They have this little plastic ring around it, maybe for chain retention. I dropped one chain on this ride, and on my first ride with the Travail, I also dropped the chain, so about the same there. 160 millimeter brake rotors on the front and rear. The Kent Travail had a 180 millimeter rotor on the front that helps with braking power, but mechanical disc brakes, they're not that powerful anyway. I didn't really notice that much of a difference on this bike. If you live someplace where you ride a lot of cross country, I would replace the derailleur first. And if you live someplace with a lot of downhill, I would replace the brakes first. These are gonna be things that you probably wanna replace in the future, but like I said, this bike is ready for upgrades. And those are kind of the only places where they saved money. Everything else is kind of an upside. I think overall, all the places they saved money were smart places. They're the places that I probably would have saved money if I was designing this bike. I will say, I think the Kent Travail has better styling than the Ozark Trail Ridge. This is nice, flat black paint, really simple, but it says Ozark Trail on the side, like as big as they could possibly make it. Nice to be proud of your bike and the brand, but maybe you're trying to buy one of these and blend in. And so I think this is a pretty good bike. I've been riding it all morning and it still works just the way it did when it left my shop. My criticism of department store bikes was never that they're cheap. It was always that they spent the money in dumb places. Let me give you a little anecdote. When I walked into Walmart, it was not to buy this bike, it was to buy towels, and I always walk by the bike section. I saw this thing and started examining it, and what I guessed was like the sporting goods manager started talking to me, and he said, man, for all that money, you think they would put rear suspension on it. And what he didn't like about this bike is what I like about this bike. They put money in smart places instead of dumb places. But you see, it turns out that building a bike like this might not be the smartest business decision for a department store. Very few buyers are gonna be looking for this. They're gonna be looking for the cheapest bike with the most features because, I don't know how to say this nicely, but like, they're not experienced cyclists. They haven't owned a whole bunch of bikes and learned the ropes. And so it's interesting that Walmart is experimenting with something like this. Maybe there is enough demand for it to be a good thing to carry, or at least to have one of them. And they must notice that YouTubers make videos about them and say how good they are and what upgrades you can put on them. And so the reason department store bikes are the way they are not the decisions that Walmart and Target and Canadian Tire are making. It's because what consumers are demanding. We're the reason that department store bikes are so cheap. And now it could be that we're the reason they're trying to make better ones. So what are we gonna do with this bike? It's more my size than the Kent Travail was. I think it's time to cull the herd. There's a new leader. I'm gonna give away the Kent Travail this weekend, June 24th, at the Backcountry Bash. It's gonna be a lot of fun, and we're celebrating the opening of new trails above Burn Park, and there are gonna be contests and giveaways and things there, and so I think somebody's gonna get the Kent Travail. Maybe on a rainy weekend, I'll upgrade this thing, turn it into the Super Ozark. We'll see. So this is an interesting development. We've demanded better bikes. We have one that you can keep for a long time, continue upgrading. I don't think the frame's bad, and most of the stuff that comes on it is fine for a beginner. Good job. I hope you found this video interesting. I hope you learned something, and if you didn't, I hope you at least found it entertaining. Thanks for riding with me today, and I'll see you next time.